The rhythmic hum of the sewing machine was the only sound that seemed to cut through the thick, stagnant quiet of my mother's house back in Lansing, Michigan. Outside, the gray November sky wept a relentless drizzle, mirroring the state of my life for the past 18 months. 18 months since I traded the vibrant, chaotic energy of my final year at Parsons School of Design in New York City for the hushed tones of sick rooms, the endless rounds of doctor's appointments, and the suffocating weight of watching my mother battle stage 3 ovarian cancer. My corner of the spare bedroom had become a makeshift studio, overflowing with thrift store finds, discarded fabrics, sketches pinned haphazardly to the wall, and the reassuring presence of my grandmother's old Singer machine. Fashion design felt like a lifetime ago, a dream belonging to a different person. Yet here, amidst the worry and the waiting, it became my lifeline. What started as a desperate need for a creative outlet morphed into Revival Designs, my tiny Etsy shop and accompanying blog. I'd spend the precious few hours Mom slept transforming forgotten garments, a stained cashmere sweater becoming a pair of chic mittens, discarded denim patchworked into a unique tote bag, a faded silk dress reimagined with intricate embroidery. It was slow, meticulous work, a meditation focused on breathing new life into the old, the discarded. Sustainable fashion wasn't just a trend for me. It felt like an act of hope, a metaphor for the healing I prayed for daily. The blog gained a small but loyal following, people drawn to the stories behind the transformations, the philosophy of mindful creation. Leo Maxwell, my boyfriend, the charismatic, fiercely ambitious finance major I'd fallen for amidst the whirlwind of NYC, was initially supportive, or at least he performed support convincingly over the phone. "You're doing great, Clara," he'd say, his voice slightly tinny from the distance. "Mom needs you. We'll figure things out when you get back. New York City will still be here." His visits back to Michigan became less frequent as the months wore on. He was busy, he explained, networking, climbing the ladder, and making connections. Connections. I learned through the grapevine of mutual friends and carefully curated social media posts that increasingly involved Genevieve Dubois, a prominent 40-something film producer known for her impeccable taste and influential circle. I saw the photos. Leo, looking effortlessly dapper on Genevieve's arm at premieres, gallery openings, exclusive parties I could only imagine. A knot of unease would tighten in my stomach, but I'd push it down. Long distance is hard, I'd tell myself, echoing his platitudes. He loves me. We'll make it work. Then came the call 6 weeks after Mom's doctors cautiously declared her in remission. I was finally planning my return to New York, sketching ideas for my final portfolio, researching studio spaces in Brooklyn, dreaming of picking up where I left off. "Clara," Leo's voice was different this time, smooth, detached, like he was discussing a stock fluctuation. "Listen, I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us. About the future." I braced myself. "Okay." "It's just, we're in different places now," he continued, the practiced words rolling out easily. "I'm building something here, making serious moves. Genevieve, she's been incredible, opening doors, introducing me to people who matter. We connect on a different level, you know, professionally, creatively." "Genevieve Dubois?" I asked, the name tasting like ash in my mouth. "The film producer you've been networking with?" "She sees my potential, Clara," he said, ignoring the implication. "She understands the world I'm moving in, and honestly—" He paused, delivering the blow with chilling nonchalance. "Your focus right now, that little sewing thing you do. It's admirable, sure, in a homespun kind of way. But it's not exactly the big leagues, is it? It doesn't align with where I'm going. My little sewing thing. The hours I poured into creating something beautiful and sustainable from cast-offs, the small business I was nurturing from nothing, the creative spark that kept me sane while my mother fought for her life, dismissed as a quaint hobby." "So you're leaving me," I stated, my voice flat, devoid of the tears I refused to let him hear. "For her, for the connections." "Let's be realistic," he scoffed, his tone laced with pity that felt more insulting than anger. "You've been out of the game for nearly 2 years. That Etsy shop isn't going to get you into Vogue, Clara. Genevieve introduced me to the costume designer for the biggest historical drama filming next year. That's the kind of leverage that builds a career, not upcycled mittens." Something inside me snapped. The hurt was immense, a physical blow that stole my breath, but beneath it a cold, hard anger began to solidify. "You're right, Leo," I said, my voice dangerously quiet now. We are in different places. And you're right, my little sewing things might not get me into Vogue tomorrow, but unlike you, I'm building something real, something with integrity, something mine. Have fun climbing." I hung up before he could respond, my hand shaking uncontrollably. The tears came then, hot and furious, not just for the lost love, but for the dismissal, the condescension, the realization that the man I thought knew me best had never truly seen my worth or respected my ambition, simply because it didn't fit his narrow definition of success. And the next few weeks were a blur of helping Mom settle into her recovery routine and making a decision. Returning to New York to the life I'd planned with Leo felt impossible now, tainted by his betrayal. I needed a fresh start, a place where I could build my brand on my own terms, away from the shadows of his ambition and the judgment of the circles he aspired to join. Los Angeles. The idea sparked, then ignited. It was a city fueled by dreams, a place where creativity and commerce collided, a hub for both high fashion and a burgeoning sustainable movement. It felt right. Risky, yes. Starting over in a notoriously tough city with minimal savings and a fledgling online business was daunting, but the thought of proving Leo wrong, of building Clara Moreau Designs into something undeniable, fueled a determination that burned brighter than the heartbreak. Within a month, I'd packed my life and Mom's singer into my beat-up hatchback. Saying goodbye to Mom, now stronger and cautiously optimistic, was hard, but she understood. "Go chase it, Clara," she'd urged, hugging me tightly. "Show them what you're made of." Driving west, watching the familiar Michigan landscape recede in the rearview mirror, I felt a potent mix of fear and exhilaration. Leo thought he'd left me behind, stuck in a small town with a small-time hobby. He had no idea he'd just ignited the fire that would forge my future. Los Angeles wasn't just a new city. It was a declaration of independence. Clara Moreau Designs was coming. Los Angeles hit me like a blast furnace after the muted grays of Michigan. The relentless sunshine, the sprawling freeways, the sheer scale of the place. It was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. I arrived with 2 suitcases, my grandmother's singer, a dwindling savings account scraped together from Etsy sales and part-time waitressing back home, and a burning resolve fueled by Leo Maxwell's parting words. Finding my footing was brutal. Rent for even a tiny studio apartment in a less-than-glamorous neighborhood ate up most of my savings. Securing a shared workspace in a noisy downtown loft amidst other aspiring designers, tattoo artists, and graphic novelists felt like a major victory. The LA fashion scene, I quickly discovered, was a bewildering ecosystem ranging from ultra-fast fashion sweatshops to impossibly exclusive haute couture ateliers. Finding my niche, sustainable, upcycled, thoughtfully crafted pieces with a story, felt like shouting into a hurricane. Days blurred into a cycle of survival. I worked a soul-crushing job folding sweaters at a high-end boutique on Melrose. The irony wasn't lost on me. Just to pay the bills. Nights and weekends were dedicated to Clara Moreau Designs. I scoured flea markets, estate sales, and fabric recycling centers for unique materials. I sketched, draped, cut, and sewed until my fingers were raw and my eyes burned. But I taught myself basic web design to upgrade my online presence beyond Etsy, learned the frustrating intricacies of social media marketing, packed and shipped orders myself from my cramped apartment floor. Loneliness was a constant companion, a dull ache beneath the frantic energy of trying to make it. There were moments, usually late at night with only the hum of the singer for company, when Leo's mocking voice echoed in my head, "Not exactly the big leagues, is it?" And I'd have to fight back tears of doubt and exhaustion. But slowly, painstakingly, things started to shift. A local sustainable lifestyle blogger stumbled upon my Instagram feed and featured one of my repurposed denim jackets. Orders trickled in, then steadied. A small, influential boutique on Abbot Kinney, known for its curated selection of independent designers, agreed to take a few pieces on consignment. Seeing my designs hanging in their beautifully minimalist space felt like the first real validation, a tangible sign that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't completely delusional. The increased visibility brought increased pressure. I hired a part-time intern, a fashion student named Maya with a sharp eye and boundless enthusiasm, just to help manage orders and social media. I started attending local artisan markets and small industry mixers, awkwardly navigating conversations with buyers and press, learning to pitch my brand with a confidence I didn't always feel. Clara Moreau Designs was still tiny, a minnow in an ocean of sharks, but it was growing authentically, built on principles I refused to compromise. 4 years after I'd driven west, 4 years of relentless hustle, Clara Moreau Designs had carved out a small but respected space. We had a dedicated online following, placement in a handful of curated boutiques across California, and were even getting whispers of interest from larger retailers looking to incorporate sustainable brands. I was working insane hours, constantly reinvesting profits back into the business, but for the first time, it felt like I was building something sustainable in every sense of the word. That's when Leo Maxwell slid back into my life, arriving not with a phone call, but via a sleek, professional-looking email. Subject: reconnecting and potential synergy. My blood ran cold just seeing his name. I almost deleted it unopened. Curiosity, or perhaps a morbid need to know what he wanted now, made me click. The tone was smooth, conciliatory, almost unrecognizable from the callous dismissal 4 years prior. He wrote about following my impressive journey from afar, praising my unique aesthetic and commitment to sustainability. He mentioned he was now working closely with Geneviève Dubois, yes, that Geneviève Dubois, as a creative consultant, helping her develop projects that bridged fashion, film, and branding. Then came the pitch. Geneviève was producing a high-profile independent film, a stylish period piece set in 1970s Laurel Canyon, and they were looking for a designer with a unique, sustainable approach to create a small capsule collection, inspired by the film's aesthetic. Something that could be worn by the lead actress in promotional shoots and potentially sold as limited edition merchandise. He name-dropped the director, the lead actress, a rapidly rising indie star, and emphasized Genevieve's personal interest in promoting emerging ethical designers. "Knowing your talent and your brand's philosophy, Clara," he wrote, "you were the first person I thought of. Geneviève loves your work. This could be huge for Clara Moreau Designs. We should talk." My heart hammered against my ribs. It was the kind of opportunity I dreamed of. Exposure, prestige, creative challenge, association with influential names. But it came attached to Leo. Could I trust him? Had he changed? Or was this another calculated move in his endless game of ambition? I spent a sleepless night weighing the risks and rewards. I discussed it with Maya, who was understandably starstruck by the names involved, but shared my reservations about Leo. "It feels almost too perfect," she'd mused. In the end, the sheer potential of the opportunity tipped the scale. This could catapult my brand to a new level, silence the lingering echoes of Leo's dismissal once and for all. I replied cautiously, agreeing to a virtual meeting. The meeting was all charm and professional polish. Leo spoke glowingly of my work, outlined the project's potential, emphasizing Genevieve's enthusiasm. He acknowledged our past difficulties with a vague wave of his hand, framing it as youthful mistakes on both sides. "We were kids, Clara. We've both grown up." He assured me this was purely professional, a chance to create something amazing together. He laid out the terms: a decent design fee plus a percentage of merchandise sales and significant press exposure. He needed concept sketches and fabric sourcing plans within 3 weeks to present to Geneviève and the film's director. Against every warning bell ringing in my head, I agreed. I convinced myself this was business, that I could handle Leo professionally, that the opportunity was worth the risk. The next 3 weeks were a creative frenzy. I dove into researching 70s Laurel Canyon style, sourcing rare vintage textiles and innovative recycled fabrics, sketching designs that blended bohemian freedom with modern sustainability. I hired 2 freelance pattern makers and seamstresses, pulling them away from other potential jobs with the promise of this high-profile project. I invested heavily in specific dead stock fabrics Leo insisted were perfect for the vibe. I poured every waking hour into creating a presentation that would blow Geneviève Dubois away, pushing my small operation to its absolute limit. Leo checked in periodically via email, offering vague encouragement but little concrete feedback. 2 days before the presentation deadline, having just sent the finalized digital lookbook and budget breakdown to Leo, I received a one-line email from his assistant. "Mr. Maxwell regrets to inform you that due to unforeseen creative shifts in the film's direction, the capsule collection project has been indefinitely postponed. He will be in touch if circumstances change. Indefinitely postponed. No explanation, no apology, just a curt dismissal." I called Leo immediately, straight to voicemail, emailed him, no reply, texted him, nothing. I contacted Geneviève Dubois' production office directly, explaining who I was and asking for clarification. Her executive assistant responded politely but firmly that Ms. Dubois was unavailable, and all designer collaborations were handled through Mr. Maxwell. The truth hit me with the force of a physical blow. There was no creative shift. This was deliberate. Leo had likely never intended for the collaboration to go through. Maybe he used my concepts to bolster his own pitch to Genevieve. Maybe he simply wanted to dangle the opportunity, then yank it away, a cruel power play to remind me who was in the big leagues. Or maybe, worst of all, he'd simply changed his mind or lost interest, discarding my work and investment with the same casual indifference he'd shown when he discarded me 4 years ago. I looked around my studio, the bolts of now useless, expensive fabric, the invoices from the freelancers I now couldn't fully pay, the detailed sketches representing weeks of lost sleep and creative energy. He hadn't just postponed a project. He had potentially crippled my entire business. The cold determination that had fueled me since our breakup momentarily faltered, replaced by a sickening wave of despair and fury. He hadn't changed. He was still the same ruthless opportunist, and I'd been a fool to believe otherwise. Again, the silence in my studio after Leo's email felt heavier than the unsold bolts of vintage silk piled in the corner. For a day, maybe two, I let the despair wash over me. Bankruptcy felt not just possible, but probable. The freelancers I couldn't pay, the lease on the workspace, and the sheer waste of materials and creative energy, it was a crushing weight. Leo's casual cruelty echoed in my mind. Not everyone is cut out for the big leagues. Had he been right all along? Was my sustainable fashion dream just a naive fantasy? But then anger, cold and sharp, pierced through the fog of self-pity. Anger at Leo, yes, but more importantly, anger at the thought of letting him be the final word on my career, my passion. Clara Moreau Designs wasn't just a business. It was proof that fashion could be beautiful and responsible. It was built on resilience, mine, and that of the materials I revived. I wouldn't let his toxic ambition tear it down. I called an emergency meeting with Maya, my now full-time assistant, and the two freelancers, Elena and Sam, whose invoices sat unpaid on my desk. I laid everything bare. Leo's betrayal, the canceled project, the precarious financial state of the company. I told them I understood if they needed to walk away, that I couldn't guarantee their next paycheck. Their response floored me. Maya, usually quiet and diligent, spoke first. Clara, we believe in what you're doing. This brand, it means something more than just clothes. We're not going anywhere. Elena and Sam immediately echoed her sentiment, offering to defer payment, even brainstorm ways to salvage the situation. Their loyalty, their belief in me when I was doubting myself, was the spark I needed. We spent the next 48 hours in intense brainstorming sessions, fueled by cheap coffee and sheer adrenaline. Selling the specialized fabrics at a loss was unavoidable, but maybe we could repurpose some elements. Could we pivot quickly? It was Maya who brought up the online community again. People love your story, Clara, she insisted. Your transparency, your mission. What if you just told them what happened? Not in a victim-y way, but honestly. Explain the situation, maybe launch an SOS, save our studio flash sale on existing inventory, or pre-orders for a new, simpler collection we can make quickly. It felt terrifyingly vulnerable. Admitting failure, admitting I'd been duped by my ex. It went against every instinct. But looking at the determined faces of Maya, Elena, and Sam, I knew we had nothing left to lose. I spent hours crafting a blog post and a short, unpolished video filmed right there in the studio. I spoke directly to the camera, explaining the canceled collaboration without naming Leo directly, just referring to a major partnership deal falling through unexpectedly, the resulting financial crisis, and our commitment to keeping the sustainable dream alive. I announced a massive flash sale on all current stock and offered limited pre-orders for a new capsule collection, simple, elegant pieces made from readily available recycled materials, promising delivery within 6 weeks. I ended by thanking the community for their support, past and future. Hitting publish felt like jumping off a cliff, but the response was instantaneous and overwhelming. The post went viral within the sustainable fashion and small business communities. Orders flooded the website, not just for the sale items, but hundreds of pre-orders for the new capsule collection. Messages poured in, former customers, fellow designers, bloggers, even strangers, offering words of encouragement, sharing the campaign, expressing outrage at the unnamed partner who had caused this. People didn't just want my clothes. They wanted to be part of the story, part of saving something they believed in. We worked around the clock, cutting, sewing, packing, shipping. The studio buzzed with a renewed sense of purpose. We weren't just fulfilling orders. We were fighting for survival, fueled by the incredible wave of support. We made enough to cover payroll, pay the freelancers, and keep the lights on, albeit barely. We were battered, but still standing. It was amidst this controlled chaos that the email arrived, an unexpected signal from a different world entirely. From Victoria Sterling, CEO, Sterling Hotels Group. Subject inquiry, Clara Moreau Designs. My heart leapt. Victoria Sterling was a legend, a self-made billionaire who had built an empire of ultra-luxury boutique hotels, renowned for their impeccable design, curated art collections, and commitment to unique guest experiences. Why would she be emailing me? The email was brief, professional. Ms. Sterling expressed admiration for my brand's distinct aesthetic and commitment to sustainable practices, which she had apparently encountered via an article in a niche design publication months earlier and had followed online since. She mentioned Sterling Hotels was exploring collaborations with unique artisans for upcoming property renovations and guest amenities, and inquired if I would be open to a preliminary discussion. Trying to contain my disbelief, I replied immediately, expressing my interest. A meeting was arranged for the following week at the Sterling Group's sleek headquarters in downtown LA. Walking into that meeting felt like stepping onto a different planet. Victoria Sterling was exactly as imposing and elegant as her reputation suggested. Mid-60s, silver hair swept back immaculately, dressed in sharp Armani, her eyes missing nothing. She listened intently as I presented my brand philosophy, my design process, showing her samples of my work. Your dedication to quality and sustainability is evident, Ms. Moreau, she said finally, her voice calm and measured. It aligns perfectly with the ethos we cultivate at Sterling Hotels. We are currently planning a significant refresh for our flagship LA property, including new staff uniforms, and potentially a curated retail collection for our boutique. I believe your vision could be integral. This was beyond anything I could have imagined. A major contract with Sterling Hotels would be transformative. We discussed concepts, potential materials, timelines. Victoria was decisive, insightful, asking sharp questions that showed she'd done her homework. Then toward the end of the meeting, she paused. There is one minor complication, or perhaps clarification needed, she said, her gaze steady. Another individual recently approached us regarding creative direction for the same LA project. A consultant formerly associated with Genevieve Dubois, Leo Maxwell. He mentioned a past acquaintance with you. My breath caught. Leo. Of course. He was trying to leverage his connection to Genevieve to land this project, probably pitching himself as the visionary director. Yes, I confirmed, keeping my voice neutral. We knew each other some years ago. Victoria held my gaze. He also presented some preliminary concepts, interesting but lacking a certain authenticity, and frankly his professional demeanor during our exploratory talks raised some flags regarding reliability. She leaned forward slightly. My team's due diligence also uncovered reports of a rather abrupt departure from his previous consultancy role with Ms. Dubois, and rumors surrounding a failed collaboration just prior to that. Does any of this sound familiar? She knew, or at least she suspected. Taking a deep breath, I made a split-second decision. No more hiding, no more vulnerability being a weapon used against me. Ms. Sterling, I said, meeting her direct gaze. Leo Maxwell and I have significant history. He was responsible for the failed collaboration you mentioned. His actions nearly bankrupted my company just last month. Victoria didn't look surprised. She simply nodded slowly. I appreciate your candor, Ms. Moreau. It confirms my assessment. She stood up, extending her hand. My offer stands. I believe your vision is the right fit for Sterling Hotels. We will not be proceeding with Mr. Maxwell on this or any other project. My team will be in touch tomorrow with a formal proposal. Walking out of that building back into the California sunshine, I felt dizzy with relief and a fierce, burning sense of vindication. Leo hadn't just failed to sabotage me this time. His own reputation had inadvertently opened the door for my biggest opportunity yet. Victoria Sterling hadn't just offered me a contract. She'd offered me a chance to finally, definitively, leave Leo Maxwell and his toxic ambition in the past. The real work was just beginning, but for the first time since finding that burner phone, the future looked not just survivable, but bright. The collaboration with Victoria Sterling was everything Leo Maxwell's empty promises were not. Professional, mutually respectful, and spectacularly successful. Victoria didn't just give me a contract. She gave me creative freedom, resources, and her invaluable mentorship. Designing the bespoke uniforms and the exclusive capsule collection for the Sterling Hotel's flagship in LA was an intense but exhilarating challenge. Victoria pushed me, demanding excellence, but always valuing my sustainable ethos and unique design perspective. The launch event for the rebranded hotel in our collection was a glittering affair, attended by LA's elite fashion press and influential figures in hospitality and design. When the models walked out wearing Clara Moreau designs, elegant, modern silhouettes crafted from an innovative recycled textiles and organic materials, the response was overwhelmingly positive. The story behind the brand, my personal journey combined with the commitment to sustainability, resonated deeply. Overnight, it felt like everything changed. Feature articles appeared not just in niche sustainable blogs, but in major fashion publications. High-end retailers who hadn't returned my calls months earlier were suddenly eager to stock my main line. The little sewing thing, as Leo had so dismissively called it, was now being hailed as a leader in conscious luxury. The Sterling Hotel's contract expanded, as Victoria promised, first to their other California properties, then nationally. Clara Moreau designs grew exponentially. I moved out of the shared loft workspace into a bright, airy studio in the Arts District, hired Maya full-time as my studio manager, and brought Elena and Sam on as permanent members of my design team. We were a small but mighty force, still grounded in our sustainable principles, but now operating on a scale I could barely have comprehended during those desperate months after Leo's betrayal. Success felt not just good, but earned. Every stitch, every design, every decision was mine. It was at a sustainable architecture and design symposium, where I was invited to speak on a panel about ethical materials, that I met Marcus Thorne. He was a prominent architect and developer, known for his stunning, eco-conscious buildings that dotted the LA skyline and coastline. He approached me after my panel, not with flirtatious charm, but with genuine curiosity about the recycled tinsel I had mentioned using in the Sterling uniforms. Our conversation flowed easily, unexpectedly. We talked about the challenges of scaling sustainable practices, the beauty of imperfect materials, the responsibility that came with creating things in the world. Marcus wasn't like the ambitious, status-obsessed men I'd encountered in Leo's orbit, nor was he the overly casual type, common in some LA circles. He possessed a quiet confidence, an intellectual depth, and an understated elegance that I found incredibly appealing. He listened intently when I spoke about my work, asking insightful questions that showed he truly understood the complexities beyond the surface glamour. We started seeing each other. Tentatively at first. Dinners at quiet neighborhood restaurants, walks along the beach discussing design philosophies, visits to obscure galleries he knew about. He was patient, understanding the lingering shadows of my past without me needing to spell out every detail of Leo's betrayal. He celebrated my successes without being intimidated by them, offering quiet support and thoughtful advice when asked, but mostly just championing my vision. With Marcus, I felt seen, respected, and valued for exactly who I was, the designer, the entrepreneur, the woman who had rebuilt her life from the ground up. The trust I thought had been irrevocably shattered began slowly, cautiously to mend. 2 years after meeting Marcus, we were married in a simple, elegant ceremony overlooking the Pacific, surrounded by close friends. My mother, radiant and healthy, Maya, Elena, Sam, and even a smiling Victoria Sterling. It felt like the closing of one chapter and the beautiful beginning of another. Life settled into a fulfilling rhythm. Clara Moreau designs continued to flourish. We launched internationally, collaborated with other like-minded brands, and I even accepted the significant investment offer from a green venture capital firm, selling a minority stake in the company for a sum that provided complete financial freedom while allowing me to retain creative control. It secured the future not just for me, but for the team who had believed in me during the darkest times. Marcus and I built a life together based on shared values, mutual respect, and a deep, quiet love. A partnership of equals in every sense. The insecure culinary school dropout Leo had abandoned felt like a ghost from a different lifetime. I was Clara Moreau Thorne now, successful, happy, and entirely unbeholden to anyone's definition of success but my own. 7 years. 7 years since Leo Maxwell had dismissed my life's work as a little sewing thing and walked away, chasing borrowed glamour. Tonight, sitting across from my husband, Marcus Thorne, in the subtly dazzling dining room of Elysian, arguably LA's most exclusive restaurant, a space Marcus himself had helped design, that memory felt like a faded photograph from someone else's album. We were celebrating the finalization of the deal that saw a majority stake in Clara Moreau Designs, acquired by a major ethical investment group for a sum that still made my head spin. Celebrating our second wedding anniversary. Celebrating the simple, profound joy of a life built together, grounded in mutual respect and shared dreams. The champagne, a vintage Krug Grande Cuvée Marcus had ordered specially, sparkled in the low light. To Clara Moreau Thorne, Marcus toasted, his eyes warm and full of pride as he raised his glass. Designer, innovator, visionary, and the most incredible woman I know. I clinked my glass against his, a genuine smile spreading across my face. And to Marcus Thorne, the brilliant architect who occasionally lets his wife consult on fabric choices for his lobbies. He laughed, a deep, easy sound that always made me feel anchored. We were discussing the merits of Japanese minimalism versus Californian modernism when a familiar voice cut through the sophisticated murmur of the restaurant. Well, 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 Clara Moreau. Didn't exactly peg you for the Elysian type. This isn't really your scene, is it? I froze mid-sentence, the champagne flute halfway to my lips. I turned slowly. There, standing beside our table, was Leo Maxwell. He looked older. The boyish charm had hardened into something sharp and slightly desperate around the eyes. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that screamed expensive, but he wore it like a costume. Beside him hovered a woman, easily 25 years his senior, dripping in diamonds and regarding me with icy condescension. Beatrice Ainsworth, a recently widowed heiress known for her lavish spending and revolving door of younger companions. "Leo," I said, my voice calm, betraying none of the sudden jolt his appearance caused. It wasn't pain, not anymore, but the unpleasant surprise of encountering a particularly persistent ghost. "Still playing dress-up, I see," he drawled, his eyes sweeping over my silk jumpsuit, one of my own designs, with a faint sneer I remembered all too well. "Trying to network your way into the big leagues? Some advice from an old friend. Places like this are for people who've actually made it." He completely ignored Marcus, focusing his condescending charm solely on me. Before I could even formulate a response, Marcus smoothly extended his hand across the table towards Leo. "Forgive me. We haven't been properly introduced. Marcus Thorne." Leo blinked, momentarily thrown off. He shook Marcus's hand reluctantly. "Leo Maxwell. Clara and I go way back." "So I understand," Marcus replied pleasantly, his grip firm. "Though perhaps you haven't kept up recently. It's actually Clara Moreau Thorne now." He gently squeezed my hand resting on the table. Leo's eyes flickered down to my wedding band, then back up to Marcus, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. "Thorne. Thorne," he murmured, trying to place the name. "The architect?" "Among other things," Marcus acknowledged modestly. "But primarily Clara's husband. We're celebrating tonight, actually. The acquisition." "Acquisition?" Leo asked, clearly lost. "Yes," Marcus continued, his tone still light but with an underlying edge that made Leo shift uncomfortably. "The majority stake purchase of Clara Moreau Designs by Luxvest Capital. Quite the validation for sustainable luxury, wouldn't you agree? The valuation has set new benchmarks for the sector. Of course." He paused, looking directly at Leo. "You probably wouldn't know much about that particular market segment. It requires a bit more, substance than just chasing trends." The color drained from Leo's face. He stared at me, then at Marcus, comprehension finally dawning with brutal clarity. The little sewing thing. The homespun hobby. He visibly processed the implications. The sale, the valuation, my marriage to this Marcus Thorne, whose name carried significant weight in LA's design and development circles. You sold your company?" Leo stammered, his earlier arrogance completely deflated. "A controlling interest," I clarified softly. "Retained creative leadership, of course. It allows me to focus on design and expand our ethical sourcing initiatives globally." "Globally," Leo echoed numbly. Beatrice Ainsworth sighed dramatically and tapped her diamond-encrusted watch. I had no idea," Leo muttered, looking utterly lost. "Congratulations, Clara, you've done well." It sounded forced, inadequate. "Thank you, Leo," I replied simply. There was nothing left to prove. He fumbled in his jacket pocket, pulling out a sleek business card. "Well, look, we should catch up properly sometime. I'm consulting now, mostly private clients." He glanced nervously towards Mrs. Ainsworth. Styling, brand strategy, maybe there's synergy. I didn't even take the card. I simply met his gaze, holding it for a brief, silent moment. A moment that contained everything. The history, the hurt, the healing, the vast distance now between us. Then I turned back to my husband. More champagne, darling? I asked Marcus, my smile genuine now. Absolutely, he replied, signaling the sommelier. Leo stood there for another awkward second, the unaccepted business card still hovering in his hand. Realizing he was completely dismissed, his face flushed a deep red. He mumbled something unintelligible and retreated hastily back to Beatrice Ainsworth, who looked thoroughly unimpressed. As they settled back at their table, I watched them for a moment, Leo leaning in, trying too hard to regain her attention, looking diminished under the restaurant's golden light. He made his choices, I thought. He chased the connections, the borrowed status. I chose to build something real. Marcus reached across the table and took my hand. To choices, he said quietly, his eyes meeting mine. And to building something real. To building something real, I echoed, raising my glass. The rest of the evening was ours. We talked, we laughed, we celebrated the life we had built together, the future stretching bright before us. Leo Maxwell and the ghosts of the past had no place here anymore. They had faded, finally and completely, into the background noise of a life fully, unapologetically lived.